Le Sacre Du Soleil Invaincu is the fifth full-length album from Neptunian Maximalism, a group that we'll consider a collective driven by Guillaume Cazalet and co-founded with saxophonist Jean-Jacques Daranc. And Daranc is not necessarily in on this recording, but he's a big part of the band's sound that they've developed over the course of many records. And the lack of the saxophone in this record makes a lot of sense. But if you go into the history of the band and you go back and listen to their records and kind of get a sense of what they are, he's an essential part of it, but also removed from this record. So it's kind of just an interesting note up front. If you know the band, there's a element of psychedelic music, there's an element of jazz, rock, and worldly positioning to it. There are drone doom elements, and there are ritualistic psychedelia in their formation of beats and movement and free jazz. And basically it's performative music. It's meant to be performed. It is long form, and it is often improvised, and that really works well with drone metal in a lot of cases, but these works tend to be active, exaggerative, and based on soloing, and that changed over the course of 3 records. So going back in their discography is worth it because you see how everything changes over time. So for this record, they've done something entirely different, and they focused on Indian classical music as the inspiration for it. We'll get a sense for how that kind of turns out here when it clashes with their sound overall through a clip here. And then I'll kind of talk about what this is and why it impressed me. So as was the case with the last several records from Neptunian Maximalism, this was a one-time live performance. It was curated and created specifically to be recorded. It is it's a triple LP, and that's 6 sides of music, and it's kind of cut up into a few parts each, and those are built around raga. Now, I won't necessarily go into the forms of Indian classical music here for the sake of not misspeaking and having to correct myself and all that, but essentially they're working beyond major and minor scale usage to emote and essentially build different keys and tones into songs that are unusual. And that's normal for Indian classical music. It's very different for basically everything but jazz and improvisational music. And so we're fully set into that mode by this record. There's really no way to keep this short, so I won't necessarily go too much into the moment by moment or parts that stood out. I mean, this is a 100-minute record, nearly 2 hours long, and every moment is just surreal enough to where it wouldn't really make sense to try to describe it in some poetic way. But I will say that being a fan of stuff like Glenn Branca and John Coltrane, and there's a lot in this band's discography that I like quite a bit, and I appreciated that this was something completely different. It is something that focuses much more on the droning, ritualistic. There's kind of a lot that goes into this record in terms of different types of instrumentation, soloing, and vocal performances. And I think there are more fixated and planned moments. There are points where there is obviously a rhythmic root to where they begin, and then there are the points where you can tell they're just kind of wilding out and improvising for a set amount of time within a movement. So the fact that this is so largely improvised, jammed, and not chaotic means that it was very well curated. And I think what Cazalet does best here is keep it all together. And as a live recording with so many voices, I think the production value really finds a way to rein all that in and make sense of it, from like the soundboard recording and incidental noise, and also just mastering it all together in a way that sounds like a record. And they had a couple of albums before that to figure that out, and they've really got it right here in terms of giving the guitar some voice, giving some of those angrier rhythms in there. Anyway, I could drone on for a long time. That would be appropriate at this point, but really this is a psychedelic audio experience. This is something that you're basically going to sit down and trip out to, relax to, and enjoy as listening, and it's not really subgenre music, and which is most of what I review is subgenre music. It is very much defined within clear parameters, and I appreciated that this broke free of all of that, and appreciate the way this band really goes for it in terms of larger conceptions, which also have a lot of free movement to them. There's a lot of expressive freedom that happens in their work that is entertaining, especially to return to. It is a high recommendation for me. I know this record is certainly not for everyone, but I do think that if you gave it a try, sat down with some of the songs, and maybe check out some of the hot spots that I point out in the written review, you might find something that is at least interesting. So check that out if you will. It released on April 11th, and again, go ahead and read my written review for more of my thoughts.